So Apply made a tier list recently with some spicy takes, and I thought it'd be fun to go over it. No hate to Apply, by the way. I'm ragging on his takes a bit, but it's honestly not that bad. It's a pretty good video, and I recommend watching the whole thing, as I'll be paraphrasing a lot. With that out of the way, let's get started. He makes a few rankings based on preconceived notions that I don't really agree with. Firstly, he ranks many teams based on a notion that D.Va and flankers will be meta, and that hard hit scans are probably going to be meh. But I wouldn't base any rankings on metas right now. I know teams have started scrimming, but no team has access to the real Overwatch 2 yet. There will be plenty of drastic changes to most heroes, and we still haven't seen the reworks for many. So personally, I think rating teams based on how meta-proof they are, rather than higher peaks into specific metas, is better. For example, Carpe and MN3 would probably be the best in the world in a double hard hit scan meta, but they are underwhelming if it's a Trace or Sombra meta. We simply don't have enough information about Overwatch 2 to make any assumptions. I'd rather there be a team be great at all metas rather than incredible at some metas. I also think he underrates a lot of the rookies out of Korean contenders and overrates NA contenders a bit. But let's jump into my thoughts on his rankings of the teams. And the team I have the biggest disagreement with is Dallas' placement. Firstly, Apply says that Dallas will be dependent on the meta a lot, which is something I disagree with. People said the exact same thing about them last year, and they managed to be the best team in North America despite not having a hit scan. They also picked up Chio, who is an upgrade over Jexay on about everything, but especially the Brig, which was a clear weakness of Jexay's throughout the season. They've covered up these holes, meaning they are not meta-proof, and they are more meta-proof than ever, despite my opinion that Edison and Guerrillo are underwhelming pickups. He also says that Atlanta should be ahead of them due to having the stronger support line, but I really disagree with that as well. Ultraviolet and OG is a cracked support line, and I really like the two. Hell, I think Ultraviolet will be the only rookie to rival proper for Rookie of the Year, alongside maybe a Prida and Finn. But Fielder has been at minimum a top 5 flex support for the past 2 years, and Chio is the best or second best main support out of Korean contenders. I think he's better than OG, despite OG being really good. I think Dallas have upgraded what was arguably a top 3 support line last year. The question about Dallas versus Atlanta's DPS line is interesting. I would ultimately say Sparkle and Doha are better than Nero, but Kai is better than Edison and Guerrillo. But ultimately, I think the difference maker is Sigma versus Edison. I really like Sigma, but ultimately he is very much a one-trick. I think Edison has a slightly better Tracer and is better on everything else. The Houston versus Atlanta DPS line is more or less the same. Kai over Merit, Pelican over Nero, and Dante over Sigma, but I agree that overall Atlanta is over Houston. I also keep saying we'll end up in a hard D.Va meta, but rates Dallas, who have fucking Hanbin on their team, lower than Shock, who don't even have an off-tank. Now for his takes on the Galads, I can somewhat agree, though I think he's being too hard on Kevster's DPS partners. Onz didn't do that much last year, but I don't think he was really put in a position to succeed. He was an emergency signing in a non-hard hit scan meta. I would still take him over most of the, if not all the hit scans in his B and C tiers aside from Philly and Washington's, and probably over Kilo as well. Petafan is a bit worrying. We need to see how he's doing when we get closer to the season's start. They'll probably either be one of the best DPS lines in the league or pretty mid. But call me Shockman, but I still rate Hans really highly. The stream thing on Petafan is a bit unfair. 2 streams isn't enough to say he hasn't been putting in any work on Overwatch whatsoever, and he does stream it pretty frequently. If Petafan really didn't have any passion for Overwatch and isn't committed to the grind, he would have just stayed in Valorant. Next, I think he is heavily underrating Toronto, likely out of ignorance for their new players. I think Moose will be one of the best tanks for Overwatch 2 and is highly flexible and consistent across all heroes, which is what you want from a tank. And Hotba is the exact same. Jorang and Twilight are legit a top 5 support duo. Jorang was arguably the most sought after rookie support this offseason. There was allegedly a huge bidding war over him, and the kid is cracked, especially on the Brig. Then Twilight is, well, Twilight. I rate the support and tank line better than Atlanta's, and their DPS line isn't as bad as people make it out to be. Yisu was a star on that Toronto roster, and was better than Aspire. Apply. And Aldo has been one of the better flex DPS in contenders Korea since he was on London in 2020. I don't rate him nearly as highly as Avril does, but I think he will impress a lot of people. Also, he'll be the Tracer player over Finale. Finale is likely there as the backup for Aldo when they want to run Tracer and Echo or whatnot. Then, if the meta really is a hard flanker meta, I wouldn't be surprised if Striker just carries Boston to a top half finish. But if we go based off the fact that we simply don't know what will be good, I'd still rate them above Vancouver and Washington. Boston has a really strong support line, and Marvel looks really solid as a solo tank, as he has experience on both roles. Their DPS line is definitely not slouches either, though slightly worse than Washington's in my opinion. Washington has the talent to be top tier for sure, but their support line and especially their coaching holds them back heavily for me, putting them into the top tier. There's the NA teams I more or less agree with. I think Paris is a bit underrated, and he fails to bring up that Flora Yaki would be a top 5 DPS lineup in a Tracer Sombra flanker meta. But otherwise it seems good. His APAC rankings are really wacky though. For Chengdu, he makes a good point that they thrive in chaos, and that's what Overwatch 2 will probably look like for a good while. However, you have to dock points off them for losing Rui, who has historically been a massive part of their success. They'll be great, don't get me wrong, but I don't see them being better than, say, Fuel, Shock, Soul, Glads, or Dragons. You also have to consider that Gaga is pretty inflexible. They don't have an off-tank at the moment. Next, saying Shock's DPS lineup is better than Soul's is a big hot take. While Proper has the edge over Prophet in my opinion, I don't think it's that big that the other DPS on Soul can't make up for it. Stalker is an insane prospect. He's been one of the top flex supports in the past few years on Gen.G. And outside of Echo and maybe Mei, I consider him to be better than Sam on his entire hero pool. Outside of Tracer and Echo comps or double hit scans, I gotta go with Soul. I do think Shock can make up for in other departments though. I need to see who Shock go with for main support and the off tank for both. But Shock might have the edge in other roles for now. Gangzhou in C tier is tragic. They have 2 Overwatch League champions in Molly and Develop. Come on, apply. I'm joking, but they are low tier in APAC, but still insanely strong, in my opinion. I can see them beating anyone in C tier, and even the likes of Toronto, Boston, and Washington on a good day. Philly is probably too high. Their DPS line is pretty cracked, but Fury's a big pickup. But they're not that top tier to the others, and their backline is kinda meh. Overall, really wacky stuff from Apply, as expected. Thanks for watching, and remember to like and subscribe for more. I upload almost daily Overwatch League content, and I'm trying to hit 100 subs by Season 5, so any subscription helps greatly. Thanks.